Tommy, you are up. Yeah. So Tommy Vitolo is, as he mentioned, our state representative, representing multiple parts of Brookline, but not all of Brookline, although you're in all of our hearts, even if you're not representing us. And I know you have something in common with Maureen. I think you have a BU connection, is that right? So we have Raul, and we have quite a BU contingent here this morning, which is great. So in addition to serving as our state representative, Tommy is an expert in energy issues and a consultant in this area. So we are very lucky to have him here to help us understand how we can make change through renewables. So appreciate you being here this morning, Tommy.
Sure. Well, thank you. What I love about this crowd is I know half of you and like that half, and the other half I just haven't gotten to know yet. So this is really a great crowd for me. And I do want to take a minute and thank the small business owners who are here. I serve on the Joint Committee for Small Business, and I know an 80-hour work week is a light week if you run a small business, and so to take the time to come here, it really is significant. I think that I at least have tremendous respect for the small business owners and managers who are able to make some time to come here. I know it is actually a real sacrifice, so thank you. This is not just a pocket square, these are my notes, so I will pull from them. So I got a couple of things. We're going to number them 1, 1, 1, and 1. The first one is how green electricity works. And in fact, it works a lot. It works in a way that's very similar to how a bank works. So at the end of the day, you take your cash and you do a drop at the bank, right? Hopefully you had a great day, a lot of cash, drop it at the bank. When you make a withdrawal 3 weeks later, they don't give you the same $20 bills that you put in 3 weeks ago, right? They don't do that. They give you a different set of $20 bills. But because we have dual entry accounting, we make sure that all of the dollars are accounted for. And green electricity works the same way. So when there's a wind turbine or a solar panel generating electricity, that electricity is put into the grid, it's put into the bank. And an accountant is keeping very careful track of how many megawatt hours of green electricity are produced. And every single one of those is accounted for. So when you sign up for receiving green electricity in your business or in your home, you are saying, I got dibs on some of that green energy. And if it goes to you, it cannot also go to anybody else. In the same way, if you withdraw money from the bank, it doesn't also go to somebody else. And so green electricity is a way that you can dramatically reduce your carbon emissions. Electricity is about 1/3 of our emissions as a society. For businesses, we're talking about lighting, we're talking about cooling. There may be other uses as well. And the reason why it may be a really nice place to start for small businesses, in addition to energy efficiency, which we'll hear about later, is number one, it's not disruptive to the day-to-day business, right? You make a phone call, but it doesn't change your retail environment at all. It doesn't impact in any way your interaction with customers, with vendors, with anyone else. So that's a real advantage if you're a business. Also, number one, it doesn't require capital, right? You're not writing a check to get something done. This is just on your monthly bill, right? And so while it is a slight additional operating expense, you don't need capital to do this. You can make the decision and move forward. And for businesses, many businesses, that's critical. Also number one, because everything is number one today, it builds on a multi-community spiral of good. And so several communities rolled out green electricity as part of community choice aggregation, and buzz got around. So then Brookline heard about it, and we said, we're going to increase the default from 5% to 25% and roll it out, with the hope that Newton gets jealous. And sure enough, they did, right? And now they're doing like 43% or something, right? And so the idea is that everyone who takes a step forward encourages everyone else to come with them. And so the step that we're asking is not just to take that default 25%, but to opt up to 100%. Can't do any more than that. That's all, right? And the more businesses, the more residents who opt up to 100%, the more we can stick it to Newton, who's also trying to do the same thing, right? And we want to best them. We want to have a higher number. And what's great is you're not just moving Brookline forward, you're also moving Newton forward. And there are other communities who are saying, Amherst is like, wait a minute, what about us? We're the best, right? And so this spiral of good, rather than a sort of a negative spiral or a downward spiral, this spiral of good really does bring about change in addition to the change that you're doing in your own business or home, right? You're multiplying, and that's so important. So that's why it matters, and there'll be lots of information about how to do it. I'm not going to get into the details. It's all sorted out. Nancy Heller on the select board has been amazing on this issue, really a leader, and so thank you, Nancy, for being so great on this. I want to talk briefly about what's happening about energy and climate in the State House, because that's kind of where I spend a lot of time. There's a lot of things that are bubbling around. It's not clear what's going to bubble to the top in this session. We already passed what was called GreenWorks, and that's a great program that will help fund climate resiliency and mitigation efforts for cities and towns, for local governments, which is great, but not so critical for this crowd who cares about small businesses, right? Other things that are kicking around include the prospect of a price on carbon, where some of the revenue will be refunded back, other will be used to invest in more zero carbon efforts. So that's kicking around. There's also what's called the 2050 Roadmap Bill, which will say, okay, if we're going to get to 80% or more reductions by 2050, how are we actually going to get there on a year-by-year basis and not just say, yeah, 2050? So those are some key bills that are kicking around. There are plenty of other ones. I have a bill related to natural gas heating specifically. My observation is, since we can't use natural gas to heat our buildings in 2040 and 2050 and meet our climate targets, the best thing we can do is stop building new natural gas heating, right? Stop digging. And the institutions that take the longest view are government, universities, and hospitals. They expect to be in the same buildings 30 years from now. We hope all of our small businesses are too, but we recognize there's more churn there, right? So my bill says, hey, state government, stop building natural gas heating systems in your own buildings, because it's bad spend if we're going to have to rip it out later, right? And so we've talked a lot about electricity, we've talked about transportation, and we're making progress, but heating is the last nut to crack of the three, and because heating systems last a long time, we need to get started sooner in addressing it so that we don't have to spend money ripping out something that we paid to install 15 or 20 years ago. That's bad spend. We don't want to do that. Finally, I want to point, this is my last number one. We're going to do this, right? I mean, look at the folks who are here today. Again, everybody has other things they could be doing. Things for their business, things at their job, but we're here because we're going to do this. And we're going to do it together, and it's going to take work. It's going to take real effort. We're going to make decisions without all the information, right? We do that all the time. We're going to have to do that here. We don't know if everything we're going to try is going to work the first time. That's all right. Small business folks do that all the time, right? You're all constantly making your best guess on what's going to work. And sometimes it works, and if it doesn't, figure it out and quickly change, right? And that's what we're going to do. And my hope is that everyone at the chamber and the local business districts talk to each other and bring each other on board. My hope is that the folks who work in this building continue to provide support and provide more support where needed to help it happen. You all need to say, hey, this is the thing we need, right? Folks in this building need to be listening to that, including town meeting. And, I'm the connection from Brookline to the State House, so call me. Talk to me about small business issues. Talk to me about energy issues. How can the state be a partner? We've got to get it done. We need to do it together. We're going to do it. That you're here today shows you're going to be part of it, and I'm thrilled for that. So thank everyone for being here. And what's next?
Great. Well, we may have a question.
Questions?
And I want to say, if anybody wanted to ask a question about on-site solar, I know we
Sure.
have a number of faith organizations here who own their own buildings and maybe thinking about, so if there's a question about that, Tommy could be somebody to ask.
Sure.
Or any other
Or I
question.
can push it off to David Lescoe or someone else.
Yes. Any questions for Tommy? You've satisfied them.
Please.
Okay.
So just a question about green electricity. So when all of the businesses say, okay, 100%, does that actually change the amount of
That's a
renewable energy that
Great question.
is
What
in the grid?
happens, right? And the answer is, Yes, it does. And here's why. In this part of the country, in New England, all of the utilities are obligated to buy a certain amount of renewable electricity, and that quantity goes up every year, right? And so we have a certain number of wind turbines and solar panels and small hydro and municipal trash burning, which is not the best, but it does count as renewable. And they're producing this green electricity every day, right? And they've got to make enough to fulfill all of the utility obligations, plus anything extra that people choose to procure, right? And if they're not making enough, then the market price for that green electricity goes up. And the utilities have to pay more, and all of the voluntary folks have to pay more. But look, this is Econ 101, right? I'm talking to a bunch of small business owners about economics. It feels a little weird, right? When the price goes up, what happens? More developers come into the market to build more renewables because that price is good enough for them to make a profit. And so there's a marketplace for green electricity. At present, for those who care about this stuff, 1 megawatt hour of green electricity is worth about $22 plus the value of the electricity itself. That price fluctuates. It's been as high in New England as $50. It actually can't get much higher than that because we put a price ceiling on it. In some parts of the country, it's as low as $7, where renewable electricity is easier to generate and where demand is lower because states aren't being as forward-thinking about this. But to answer your question, every time somebody buys some voluntarily and makes it so that the utilities can't get it, more has to be built for the utilities to satisfy their obligations. Right? It's just a limited resource, and every time we take some out, some more has to backfill. And that's why it's so effective. Great question.
Maybe a question more for Anne, but is there a decal for a business that buys the 100% clean electricity?
Basically, that's the one thing I was going to comment on afterwards. Nancy Hull is leading the effort through the Select Board for Climate Action with other stakeholders about 100% opting up. If any business signs up to go 100%, Nancy just told me that we're more than happy to give them a sign to put it in their window of their business. So we're going to do this after the fact. We're going to have a sign-up sheet if anyone's interested to be able to get that sign if they opt up to 100% for their business.
And I will add, I do a newsletter to about 2,500 folks, and I'm always looking to celebrate local success stories. So small businesses that opt up to 100%, if they want, I'd be happy to feature them in my newsletter as well. Get the word out as many ways as we can. Celebrate success.
Talking to what Tommy's saying, I'm certain we can do something on our green website with the chamber to be able to highlight businesses that have opted up and give you some exposure in Brookline on our chamber website.
We've got to celebrate our
Go
wins.
Green.
So we, Two Life Communities has a virtual net metering contract where we get 1 million kilowatts of electricity from a solar farm that was built in Woburn. Can we be 100% green if we're buying and we put it all on our building in Brookline?
So my question to you is, it's a bit of a technical question, is does that quantity of kilowatt hours provide for 100% of your electricity, or do you also have a little bit left you got to buy?
It can provide for 100% of our electricity
Over the course of a year.
In our Brookline building.
You expect over the course of a year it'll get you to 100%?
Yeah.
So then, quite simply, you could opt up to 100% and, essentially buy zero more, but you're still there. Yeah, I think that.
Yeah, we can't opt up to 100% with the utility because because we're
because you've got a third party. Yeah,
third
understood.
party that's much less expensive than the utility.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question, is if you do it in a way that's not through this particular program, what happens? Yeah. And I don't have an answer for that question, but it's a question that folks should talk about.
So we can talk about it later, but I think also you would still get, in terms of this program, the Climate is Everybody's Business, that would give you points within this self-assessment. So you would be recognized through the Climate is Everybody's Business. Even
And
if it's
also
not.
later on, you're going to be talking about your group is one of the featured speakers. They have a green roof. They're doing like hot water solar on their roof. So you guys are doing a lot of fantastic things, and you're an example of doing it up front because you're just breaking ground now and doing a development. So thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah.
I just want to point out one thing, that the poster here is for the town of Brookline's Community Choice Aggregation Electricity Program. You're probably getting lots of phone calls, lots of letters in the mail from other programs. The Brookline program has been vetted by the Attorney General and the state. We don't know about some of the others. In fact, the Attorney General has talked about some of the programs being, I can't remember what the word they used, but
Questionable.
yeah, scams, but they had a better word. Predatory companies. So we think that the safest one is to go with the Brookline Green Electricity because the rates are stable. It's all been a vetted program through the town. And there are lots of other mailings and phone calls you'll be getting.
Yeah, and actually we are getting calls internally that some people have been caught in these bad contracts. So the town does have an informal position on this. I mean, if you want to stay with Eversource, that's fine, or stay with the vetted program with the town. But unless you have somebody that, a good lawyer, somebody that's looking at some of these other programs, we are not recommending you go with them because some of them have been fraudulent, some of them are scams, and unless you know how to sort through that, it is very, very complicated market out there. So the Brookline Green Electricity Program comes, usually it's with Eversource, Brookline's logo, and then currently our supplier is Dynegy. That'll change in January, but so the community choice that program, or you can get some staying with Eversource if you're not interested in the program. But the key, some of these other programs, make sure you're vetting them, or at least be aware that some of them are scams. There's people that are getting calls that say Town of Brookline, and we're not running any call program. So it's
And there's some envelopes that come out with the states, like a diagram of Massachusetts, and they're not connected to Massachusetts nor any other affiliate, and it's kind of deceptive.
yeah.
So I think we have time for one other quick question, and then I want to switch us over to Maureen.
My question is, do you feel that the utilities, the big utilities, are doing enough? And if not, what is the state doing to encourage them to do more?
So I've spent the last 8 years intervening in public utility dockets around the country. So I have a pretty good feel for how this works at a regulatory level. And the short answer is the utilities are doing exactly as much as we tell them to do. And in fact, in many cases, they're not allowed to do more than that, right? They're not allowed to make choices to go above and beyond what we ask them to do. Now, could they do a better job with all of their programs? Could they find ways to get more energy efficiency out there to market a little better? Could they find ways to save a little money on each distribution circuit upgrade? I'm sure that they could always do a better job. We could all do a better job at our job, right? But the right question is the second part, which is, well, what is the state doing to ask more of them? Because that's what I think we need to be doing. I think that we, state government, needs to say, hey, you're a franchise. We could Eversource could disappear off the map tomorrow. They only get to operate because the state allows them to. That's how it works. They're a regulated monopoly. And so we, state government, set their standards. And they have said consistently, you tell us what the standard is, hopefully you tell us with enough time so we can prepare for it, and we're going to get it done. And I believe that. And so state government needs to ratchet up the renewable portfolio standard, that obligation, that renewable obligation that Roxy asked about. If we require them to buy more renewable electricity, they're going to do it, and then we're going to have more, right? The state can do more about including things like the social cost of carbon in the energy efficiency cost evaluation so that more energy efficiency is cost effective, so that Eversource and other utilities partner with businesses and homes to deploy more of it, right? So I think it's easy to throw rocks at the power company, and I'm just as guilty of it as everyone else. And sometimes they deserve it. I'm not, sometimes they do. But I think that for the most part, if we want more from them, we need state government to be clear about what we want from them and to put it into law. And that's how we're going to get there.
Well, just a quick follow-up, though. It's hard to get them, for instance, to be responsive on things like rebates for small business improvements, which are very, very small from their point of view. They don't, rise to the level of getting their attention. So, I've been very frustrated trying to get small rebates from them for things that I've done.
So I don't have a lot of experience working with utilities personally on energy efficiency programs. And again, I have no doubt there's room for improvement. And where there's room for improvement, we need to demand that. And in fact, the Attorney General, Maura Healey, is a great resource for that. She is the people's lawyer in this case.
Well, you say that, but I have bad experience of trying to get them to do anything
I'm sorry to
either,
hear that.
because they said it wasn't really their job to push the utility.
Let's talk offline and see if we can come up with a
Follow-up
solution.
also is, I hear our state rep is pretty good about this. So how do we go
He's not
ahead
so
and
bad.
pressure, I hear. So how do we go ahead and pressure the rest of government to do
Mm-hmm.
more? Because they're always, compromising down.
Yeah, well, the state is diverse and the voters are diverse in the state. And so, what you're really asking is how do we get other representatives to feel this pressure as well? How do we get other senators to feel this pressure as well in other parts of the state? And the answer is, realistically, it's got to come from their voters, right? If you call the state rep from Marlboro, he or she might be polite, but that goes right in the round file, right? That goes right in the trash can because you're not a voter for that representative or that senator. And so the answer is we lead by example locally, and we talk about it an awful lot to our friends from across the state and say, hey, we need you on board too.
Can we
And then
pressure the governor?
absolutely.
Okay.
And then it's also my job to keep working on it as well.
I know we could keep talking
That's
with
the
Tommy
time,
all
so-
day, because you have so much that you can share, so much wisdom. But I think you're gonna stay for a little bit.
I will.
Yeah,
I will.
so if people have burning questions, you could ask Tommy
You
at a
bet.
sidebar, but thank you for
You're very
joining us.
welcome. We focus a lot on climate with individuals and with big corporations, and this splits the difference and says local businesses also have a role and want to get out there and want to be part of the solution, but have very particular requirements and needs. And part of this event is helping small businesses understand where they can both make their business better and reduce their impact on the environment at the same time. The clearest reason is we all have to. We all have to. We have to in our personal lives, we have to in our professional lives, and small businesses are part of that. But in a community like Brookline, where we are at the forefront and we really do value being progressive and moving forward on issues, a business that recognizes this challenge and is publicly part of the solution is the kind of business I want to shop at. So we have local, state, and national resources. Locally, Town Hall serves as a great resource. The Brookline Chamber of Commerce, the Merchants Associations are all working together alongside Climate Action Brookline and other organizations in town. And so really it is a community effort. And my hope is that folks continue to work together at events like this. We have big events usually in the spring around climate. And if we keep talking to each other and keep sharing our positive experiences and our new ideas, and importantly, our successes, we're going to see each business, each home get better and better about this every year.